Sorry, Roger?
Well, thanks very much, Yolanda, for the presentation and for your support of pain research. And I think you said something like about 1.4% of the NIH budget is devoted to pain research.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to ask you a question I'm sure you can't answer, but what's the right number for the most expensive, most prevalent, most disabling problem in the developed world? I'm pretty sure it's higher than 1.4%, but you know, how can we get to a point where we're investing in pain research to the level of its impact on public health?
So you're right, I can't answer the first part of that question. And the second part of the question is equally as tricky, right? So putting a dollar amount on that is exceedingly difficult. I mean, if you take, for example, the huge investment in cancer research, which I don't know off the top of my head what that dollar amount would be, but it's quite large, as they're one of the largest institutes at NIH, and only in the recent years has headway been made with immunotherapies and so on. So don't have an answer for that, other than when we have a cure, we'll know what the dollar amount was.
So my question for you is, I'm wondering, you noted a number of examples
Yes.
of cross-institute or cross-agency work
Yes.
on a variety of initiatives. Would this be an area where such a cross-agency initiative is warranted at this point? And who would be the likely players? And then
Okay.
the other question I have is, I'm wondering about the flow of dollars from these research grants. How much of it goes into dental schools? How much of it goes into medical schools? If you have that kind of a figure, and what would be the mechanisms, the NIH mechanisms that would be particularly useful to pull together groups from both of those areas to fund research?
Okay, so the first part of your question that has to do with our trans-NIH collaborations, I can give you several examples of. So, for example, the NIH Pain Consortium is one of those collaborative efforts where we have participation. I think it's from 21 NIH institutes and centers. And we have in the past and still do work together to generate requests for applications on in specific targeted areas that are relevant to many of the institutes. And the institutes sign on to these so not all 21 institutes and centers will sign on to every funding opportunity announcement. The ones whose mission is congruent with the topic usually sign on. And we work together to generate those FOAs and release them. I can give you a recent example. NCCIH recently released one focusing on the sleep and pain. So that was recently released, and several institutes and centers are on that, including us, because it's an area of interest for us related to oral facial pain. That's just one example. And it really varies in terms of IC leadership, right? So NCCIH's lead on that one. There are others where other institutes lead efforts. For example, our institute led one years ago under John Kuziak through the NIH Blueprint for Neuroscience. It was a grand challenge on chronic pain. And I think the NIH Blueprint currently has participation from 12 institutes and centers, and we all participated in that one. And please remind me of the second part of your question. Oh, the funding levels, the mechanisms that would be useful. So, I'm sorry? Okay. Well, here's I can give you. As Martha walks up here, I can give you one quick example of do you want to come up here, Martha? Okay. Okay. So I just wanted to give you one quick example of it's not a request. So we put out a request for applications to a supplement opportunity that's actually active right now. And I think it closes today for new collaborative efforts between investigators that have not collaborated in the past. So they have to apply, they must not have collaborated via submission of grant applications or publications with the thought that we would like to collaborate in novel collaborations such as those, people at dental institutions, medical institutions, or across different fields. So that's one example. But other mechanisms can be used for that too.
So just a few comments. One is to address Roger's impossible question. Unfortunately, it takes a crisis to act, and so we have a crisis right now, and with that, we've gotten more money. So that $500 million, which is actually $850 that we have to spend till October, that Yolanda and others have been working 24/7 on funding opportunity initiatives, where we had 30 out, right?
40.
40.
It's over 40.
And some are coming back in now.
And NIDCR participates on about 21 of those, which is the ones that are focused on pain research.
Yeah, so that's, and with that crisis, you know, it's not just about the opioids, it's about pain management,
Yeah.
pain itself. So that's one aspect. So we are very, very active and very trans NIH. I'm on an executive committee, and Dr. Francis Collins is very involved and very engaged and sees this as a critical thing. The other thing that we have is the Common Fund, and the Common Fund budget is now ahead of the NIDCR budget. It's over $500 million, about $550.
I think so, yeah.
And one of the Common Fund things that I think has been approved is going from acute to chronic pain.
It's approved, applications are in, review is complete.
So
Yes.
just as this is very timely, but there's a lot of trans NIH
Yeah.
activities.
Yeah, I'm on that working group along with many of the HEAL initiatives.
Yolanda, thank you, and want to echo the comments before about your being here, your supporting, NIDCR supporting this important effort. My question, I think, is rather simple, but maybe not easy to answer, and it has to do with semantics and language.
Okay.
The program that you're the head of is the Neuroscience of Orofacial Pain and Temporomandibular Disorders.
Yes.
And in your discussion, you switched back and forth between TMD and orofacial pain.
Yes.
Does this create an unnecessary or unintended cognitive siloing, if you will? Would it be analogous if NINDS had a program in migraine and headache disorders? Do you get what I'm saying?
I get what you're saying, and I can give you a little bit of the rationale behind that. So my portfolio is primarily focused on pain. And I'm a neuroscientist by training, so that's appropriate, correct? So some of the other TMD projects that I described that are not pain focused, such as the regenerative medicine efforts, that portfolio is led with by Nadia Leminski, who's sitting right behind you, who has a significant amount of expertise in regenerative medicine. And we also have a mineralization program that looks at chondrogenesis, led by Dr. Jason Wan. So I want to assure you that we all work very closely together to dovetail our efforts.
So what you're saying is the TMD portion of this encompasses much more
Than just pain.
conceptually than just pain.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes.
So I have one more question. So we heard a lot this morning about these conditions really being thought of beyond maybe just the TMD and just the joint and just
Yes.
the area, and that maybe we're looking at more of a continuum, and maybe we need to be looking outside. How do you work that kind of information into your funding stream and what you're interested in seeing? I think it's a tough question a little bit because, or
It-
is it?
Well, yes and no. And I guess if I take a step back and think about our, much of that data has been generated through NIDCR support of opera over the years. And the one thing that I didn't mention was that our investment in opera began in 2005, and they're still active. So that partly answers your question. And now if you're thinking about the continuum, I would say that's also where our trans NIH efforts come in. And I can refer back to Martha's example of the Common Fund, that will be looking at factors that influence transition, right, or the continuum, but it's also focused on trying to identify resilience, mechanisms of resilience, which is important. And I can say, like I said, I'm on that working group, and we've had many discussions about how that compares, relates, or is different to opera. And so, does that answer? Okay.
All right. Thank you very much. Unless did I miss any other questions? Okay. Thank you very much. It was very helpful.
Thank you.